All right. Welcome back to Boss Uncaged podcast. So this episode is interesting in the sense that you guys know that we have like a food podcast as well. So and usually somebody will come through the Boss Uncaged pipeline and then they may end up in our book club podcast or a food podcast. But in this case, it was reversed. So Heather had opportunity to do our foodie podcast and it was hilarious. And we even did like a after dark episode. So we ended up recording, I don't know, probably like close to 3 hours worth of content. It was definitely crazy. So we definitely got to know each other. In that episode, I had to kind of come up with a new formula for these nicknames because, again, obviously there's nicknames for that podcast and nicknames for this podcast. So I had to figure out a combination. So in this case, Heather is going to be the Uncaged Goddess Boss.
Ooh,
yeah, and the hearts.
Uncaged Goddess Boss. I like it.
So you have two names. You can go with Uncaged Goddess, or you could always go with Uncaged Goddess Boss. Either one, right? So I mean, they're both in the same hemisphere. So I want you to kind of talk about like who you are. I want you to introduce yourself to our audience, and what would you like to talk about today?
Well, being that this is a business podcast, I guess we'll go there. I mean, how I got to being a business owner. I used to be a former bartender, and that's kind of why we have that connection with food. I was in restaurants and bars a long time. And it gave me an appreciation for it. And, you know, that's just a tough lifestyle. And I stayed in it because I like money. I like making fast money. However, with that said, the industry has changed. And of course, you know, the whole COVID thing completely changed the industry. And, you know, now I'm 40. So this was just a few years ago. I was like, I really need to make a decision. This is not the same thing that I enjoyed. I became a million different things other than serving food and making drinks. I was a sanitizer, a takeout person, a furniture mover. The money was not the same. So there was no incentive for me to stay. So that led me into make a decision. And I will never forget my friend and boss in the place I was working at that time. He said that to me. He's like, make a decision, figure it the fuck out. I don't feel bad for you. And so I was like, okay, I had to sit with it and make a decision. And I ended up falling into health coaching. I've always been into health and wellness. And, you know, I went through a program, got my certifications, figured out how to run the business and got that going. And that went well. And for a couple of years, that was going. The only thing with coaching is it's not consistent. I'm seeing ebbs and flows. It's a little bit seasonal, if you might say. And so with that, I started developing wellness parties. So that's another avenue I took. So that's really good to fill in during those seasonal times and just another avenue of marketing that I'm being paid for. And yeah, I'll stop there.
No, I'm just listening to me. So obviously it's pretty interesting. And to your point, I could definitely see the connections between the food, but like, how did you kind of decide with your love of food to kind of dive into wellness, not just like food coaching, not just losing weight, but it's more holistic than that. So like, how did you switch into that?
That's a great question. So you know this because we talked about this. I love good food. I do. It's amazing. I also have gone through periods of time where I was an extreme calorie counter and obsessed with weight loss. I had children at a very young age, and that started the whole cycle of like, you know, I'd put on some weight and so quickly try to get it off. And that was still at the time where there was very much a diet culture and eat as little as possible and be as skinny as you can be. And I was definitely a part of that. I mean, there were times those things would rule my life where I wouldn't even go out with friends and be social. Like, let's go for a drink. Nope, not drinking. Let's go have some food. I'm not eating restaurant food. I don't know how many calories are in that. And so you can definitely see how that affects your quality of life. And taking that a step further, I'm also a person that lives with depression and anxiety. So you can imagine that these kind of behaviors don't complement that very well. It just exacerbates all of those issues. And so to take it back a little bit, there's been periods of my time where I've been super depressed, and I've realized some of that was situational, but I've realized I had to take control of it, because there was that one certain time in my life where, no, it's postpartum. No, it's this. No, it's that. And I was put on a lot of antidepressants, and I tried out a ton of them, and they just made everything worse. Mm-hmm. There was one point where, I'd go into the doctor. They're like, how are you feeling? I'm like, well, I'm super tired. I think I feel better, but I have no energy. And then they put me on some crazy uppers. And how you feeling now? Now I'm feeling like I can't sleep. So now they put me on these crazy downers. And the mix of medications I was on was alarming. Like, now that I look back at that, I'm like, how were these doctors allowed to do that? It's just insane. And so I got to the point, now I don't take medication for any of this stuff, because I found, when I'm not feeling amazing, when I'm super anxious, when I'm feeling depressed, what does my self-care look like? And it's just about, I'm not revolutionizing anything. Weight loss, the holistic world, it's just about going back to basics and doing the things you should be doing. Working out, water, what kind of food are you eating? What's your social life like? What's your work life like? And just having those, and I'd say balance, but it's never really a balance, but it's just hitting all of those points.
Well, I think there's another added benefit to what you're doing, because to your point, you started doing these parties, but now you're doing these parties with a hint of travel. So, and again, like, you love to travel as well. So I want you to kind of talk about, like, how did travel come into play to what you're doing, and how has that benefited you with your health?
Well, I feel like I have to add this part in, like, I don't know, it's going to get a little heavy for a second, but it definitely brought me to my love of travel. So when I was young, we all have parents, but my father died by suicide. And so that was always a factor in my life. Then as I got older, I got married at a young age. I got divorced at a young age. It was just a whole crazy situation. But after we separated, this person couldn't get his life together at all. And he actually died by suicide as well. And to me, having those things very prevalent in my life, it just reminds me, like, we have to live. Like, people that do that, they are very sick and unwell, and they're not living. They don't know what it's like to actually go out and live life. And so, having my own depression issues, I started looking at life in that way. Like, what would I do if I was to die tomorrow? And I went out, I took a trip by myself. I got my passport. I took my first solo trip. And it was so eye-opening. And I came back a changed person. And from then on, I was like, I have to do this. And I fell in love with it. And just everywhere you go, like, your eyes are opened, and I come back a different person. I'm sure you feel the same way.
Yeah. I think it definitely expands the character of the individual by having those experiences, and it allows you to realize that your city or your local thing is not the only thing that even exists in the world. So, like, how does that play into, like, your kids? Because that's also a very huge component as far as changing what you've learned from your parents and then influencing your kids in a different direction. How has that happened for
you? So that's great, because I actually stepped back to admire this recently. And so we have a very untraditional family. My family helps a lot. My ex's family helps even more. We are all, a village now, especially after their father passed away. Everyone banded together, and it was team kids. Our goal is to make sure these kids are awesome and never lacking in anything, and grow up to be wonderful human beings. So they're always encouraged to do new things. My daughter got accepted into this program. So she sees I like to travel. She sees I'm doing all these things. So she got the opportunity to travel to Spain in her junior year of high school. And luckily she got to do it on a scholarship. And it was great. And so she saw that. She was 17 years old, maybe. And she was like, this is amazing. And the freedom that it gave her. And, she had to learn how to use trains to bounce around. It's teaching good life skills, but now she has a list of all the places she wants to go.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm making a move to Costa Rica. You know this, but everyone else does not. And they are not coming with me. That one's in college. The other one's 17. The other one's 13. So we have the plan. I'll be back to visit a couple times, but they're excited to get to travel there. They're like, great. So summer vacations are now in Costa Rica. That's the plan. So it's instilled this whole adventurousness in them.
I think it's definitely fascinating. I mean, the dynamic of what you're talking about from your the maternal side, like how does that then play into like your clients? Because it seems like you're very like the opposite of being depressed, right? Like the way you come across generally is like you're happy, you're glowing, but you're probably dealing with a lot of people that are dealing with depression as well. So how does you understanding how to overcome the depression and also being a mom play into when you're dealing with your clients?
So yes, you're right. I really try to embrace like positivity and joyfulness and just adventure because that excites me. And something that I found being that a person that likes to travel, people often feel stuck. And a lot of people live in this place of, oh, I can't, I wish I could do that, but this, but that. What do you mean you can't? I mean, of course you can. Just make the decision to do it. There's always a way to do something. I don't know how many times I decided I'm going to do something crazy or just something I want to do. And you are driven to do that thing. And somehow the universe moves and you can make that happen. And I do attract a lot of people with depression and anxiety because I understand it so well. And I am very empathetic towards it. Mm-hmm. But I'm also not going to let you sit in that and just dwell in it. There's a point you have to take action for yourself. And that's a huge thing I teach all of my clients to do. Advocate for yourself. You're the only person that's going to make you better. Yes, you can have a therapist. You can have a psychiatrist if you do need medicine. But you have to do the work, whether it's your mental health or your physical health. Mm-hmm. You have to do the work. I'm not doing it for you. Nobody else is going to do it for you. You have to.
So, I mean, with that being said, I want you to kind of talk about like what's included in with your 21-day program, like the one-on-one program, and how has that grown and morphed over the years?
So I started off with just the 12-week program that I was doing. However, I found if people are new to coaching or unsure what they're getting into, 12 weeks can seem like a very long time. Mm-hmm. I know it's not very long. I mean, I'm sure we can both look back and all the listeners can look back and feel like January was just yesterday. Yeah. But what if you instilled all these habits from January? You said you were going to do it in January. How many people did not? Look at how much you could have accomplished by today. And so 21 days is a short amount of time. So I really just took the beginning parts of the 12-week program and put it into the 21 days. So when you start with the 21 days, you don't have that fear of commitment. Mm-hmm. It seems like, okay, 3 weeks, I can do that. And we're really just establishing the basics. What we're doing in those 21 days is just developing the habit, getting you to see, yes, you can do it. And some people decide to continue into the 12-week program, and some people feel like, okay, I'm good. I feel like I got a head start. Now I have momentum to keep going. So that's really just a foundation. You have the accountability to do it, and you're proving to yourself that, yes, you can. If you commit for 21 days, you're more likely to keep that ball rolling because you've got the momentum going. Most people's problem is just getting started.
So, I mean, you talk about most people's problem is just getting started. And, obviously you have a following on Instagram and you kind of do these Instagram lives. And it kind of like now that you're speaking, it makes like definite sense, like the title of it. So the title that I've seen on a couple of your videos is Why It Matters. So mm-hmm. I want you to kind of like talk about that. I mean, obviously you're dealing with people with depression, you're dealing with people that are looking to become better, but playing off of those 3 words, why it matters, how important is that to what the work that you're doing right now?
Well, because, the word holistic can sometimes be very generic and boring, but like I explained earlier, it really is all those things. I approach weight loss and healthy living from all avenues. Like I said, your social life, your work, all of those things, along with food and exercise. And when I do the Instagram lives, we touch on all of these different topics. We touch on relationships. We touch on limiting beliefs. We touch on confidence, and bringing it all together. I bring on different coaches that are experts in that topic. And that's what we talk about, why it matters to your health and why it's important. And just to bring awareness around it. Holistic just means all of the things. You have to pay attention to all of them. And yeah, traveling is one of them. One of my first retreats that I'm holding, it has nothing to do with yoga or exercise or anything. It's just the experience of adventure and being with other people and seeing new things. It's a more active and fun thing because fun is important. I literally have a whole session where we just talk about fun things. Like, are you having fun in your life?
So, I mean, talking about fun and kind of putting that into the hemisphere of like volunteering, I realized that on your LinkedIn page, it says like teaching English as a foreign language. Like, where does that fall into this equation? I understand the travel part, but like, when did you say, hey, I can kind of educate people on English and kind of make people come together because of the bridging of the gap of the languages?
Well, so they are actually related because the very first time that I visited Costa Rica was doing a volunteer trip. And I don't know where I saw this. It's like one day I got this crazy idea in my head. I must have heard it somewhere that, yeah, volunteering in another country is a thing. And I kind of started exploring, how do you do that? What does that look like? And, we have Google, you can find anything you want to. And I found this great program. It's like, all right, let me try it out. And I did it for just a week. I was like, I don't know, because you can do these programs for 1 week, up to a month, up to 3 months, even in some places. And so I chose Costa Rica. I had never been there before. And I was staying in San Jose, which is the city. And part of the really beautiful experience, and I think that's why I like this country so much, is the experience I had. I didn't just go sit in a resort and sit on a beach drinking pina coladas. I stayed with a local family. I ate local food. I had to take the bus everywhere. And I will never forget. I mean, the first day we have someone that's showing us where we're going. And, I have all my Costa Rican colones in my hand, and she's telling me how to take the bus. And I'm like, I'm in another country. You want me to just use the money and take the bus? To me, I was like, is this woman crazy? And it was so easy. Like, once you do it 2 times, it was fine. But to me, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so overwhelming. So we had to take 2 buses from the house to get to where we were doing the volunteer work. And it wasn't quite in the slums, but it was in a much poorer part than where I was staying and where tourists go. So we had to take 2 buses to get there. And this was a really beautiful school that they had for kids from, babies to 5 years old. And what this school was doing was they did take the kids from some of those really rougher slum areas. And this was kind of like their daycare. And it was a state-run facility. But they really did great. They had a lot of donations coming in. They had a lot of structure. And I ended up working with like the 2 and 3-year-olds for the week. And it was just so nice. From the second I walked in, and I say nice, it was a nice experience for me, but it was, these kids really needed the help. Like, the teachers needed the help because the kids would come in, they would brush their teeth, get them into regular clothes. They would give them lice treatments. They would feed them breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then send them home. Because once they got home, they might not get any care at all. Some of these kids, I heard their families were just these big extended families. It might not even be their parents. Parents might be on drugs, and they might have older siblings who aren't getting the same care. So you have to keep doing the lice treatments to them because they keep getting, I don't know what the word is, but you have to keep doing it. And it felt like it was very much needed. And it was nice to be able to help with all of those things and help with the education. And we did some English there. I was really impressed how they taught some English songs and made it playful, but these kids just wanted love. And that was the biggest thing for me. It was like, man, I have so much of that to give. Forget all this other stuff. These little kids just wanted connection and to laugh and play and sing silly songs. And it was just the best experience for me.
So, I mean, like hearing you say that, it kind of really goes into like, you know, if anyone was watching the video, you started off with the heart, right? And then on the food podcast, we did like the pumping heart. And then I think it was a statement on one of your social is saying something along the lines of like speaking up for what you know is right. So again, collectively, you're not just talking about like health. You're not talking about just food. The real thing you're talking about is like a level of love to humanity to a certain extent. So I want you to kind of talk about like, who is your avatar? Who ideally are you looking to actually help to educate them on your space and to make them a better person?
Oh, goodness. That's such a good question because it does keep evolving. So with my coaching clients, it's usually people that are yo-yo dieters. They have a problem sticking to the healthy habits, and it's usually because they have some kind of underlying depression or anxiety or something else going on, and a lack of confidence. I mean, I hate to say it, but it comes with the territory. If you don't feel good about how you look, you're not taking care of yourself. You usually don't have that confidence. And I always see it in my clients. I don't know if it's a gift I have. I don't know if everyone has it, but I just see how beautiful they are. And my goal as we're working together is to get them to see it too. And it happened somewhere around like the 5th session when we're doing 12 weeks. You just start to see them glowing. They just show up different. They like did something different with their hair. They just put on a new outfit because they're taking pride in how they feel. And their relationships start changing because they're acting different. And it's just confidence. It goes such a long way. And so that's with my coaching people. And with the parties I do, that's typically a standard thing. I market to luxury rental communities and we hold them for the residents. So there, the mission is a little bit different. The mission there is bringing people together under the common umbrella of wellness. They have that interest all together. And the thing I always hear when I go into these parties, oh, I never met anyone in this building. And I live in an apartment building like that. We don't talk to each other. We see people and it's just, we go about our own days because we're so focused on ourselves. We just are. It's not, I don't know. I live in Jersey. I don't know how it is other places. I'm sure a lot of other places are much friendlier than Jersey, but we stay to ourselves. We don't talk to people. We don't have Southern hospitality. We're not going out of our way. If you take too long to say something, to say your hellos, like, I got places to go, lady. So it's just how it is here.
Gotcha.
And I'm guilty of that too. And now with being that I'm going to Costa Rica, we've just added retreats into the world, the Wyatt wellness world. And that is going to be something different for me. It's just exposing people to travel in a beautiful country and people that maybe were scared to do it. Like the first one is geared towards single women because they're typically the people who aren't as adventurous. They're not going to go someplace by themselves. A lot do, but some are terrified of that. And I can do anything by myself. I go to the movies by myself. I go out to eat by myself. I travel by myself. People can't do that. And a lot of that, it has that common denominator of instilling the confidence to be able to do such things. So this is just bridging that gap as well a little bit. I just want to show them the world, show them adventure and fun, and just expose them to just excitement.
I think one of the key words that you've been saying since this show started is confidence. So I want you to kind of, I think confidence is probably one of your key words that to describe who you are already. So outside of using confidence, can you define yourself just using 3 to 5 words?
Okay. Besides confidence, I would definitely say adventurous is up there. I would also say rebellious, loving, um, determined,
Mm.
very determined, and ambitious.
It's an interesting combination. So taking all those elements of who you are right now and knowing what you know right now, if you had an opportunity to travel back in time to a younger version of yourself and talking to yourself not only about the depression, but just about business and how to grow and be more prosperous, when would you go back to and what would you say to yourself?
Oh man, I would go back to 2 times. I would say before I got married because I was definitely too young and I barely graduated high school because I was way too rebellious.
Mm.
And, I just never fit into like the norms of society. Anything society tells you you should be doing, like I don't want to do.
Mm.
However, being said, when I was that age, I was like, yes, I'm getting married. I'm going to have a family and all of this stuff. However, and don't get me wrong, like I'm grateful for the way things turned out, but I don't think I ever really wanted that.
Mm.
Like me in that traditional world, it's just not me. And I wish I would have had the confidence to know that then, to say, hey, girl, you are much smarter than you think you are. You're ambitious. You are determined. You can do anything you want. And I wish I would have had somebody tell me to figure it the fuck out then,
Mm.
instead of taking the path I did. And the second place I would go back to was when there was a very specific time, and it was after I had my second daughter. I really did not want to be married anymore. I was like, ooh, this is not working for me. This is not what I signed up for. We were young, the relationship changed. It's like, this is not what I want to be doing with my life. And I'm not happy. And I vocalized this. The person I was with at the time, he wasn't having it, told me I was very selfish. And I even went to family. My family said, hey, you wanted to be married? You stay married. And that actually brought me to like one of the worst depressive episodes of my life. And that lasted for several years. And I wish at that time, I would give that girl the confidence to say, it's going to be fine, walk away, figure it out and do it. And I definitely didn't have other people telling me that. So I wish I could have given myself that, just to know that, hey, you can leave and it will be fine. If you're not happy somewhere, you can leave and it's fine. And that's very much my personality now. If I'm not having fun somewhere, someone's annoying me. I'm just like, I'm out. This isn't fun. And maybe it's more to the extreme now, but it works well for me.
So, I mean, going back to one of your keywords, you was talking about being ambitious, right? So this entire story that we're talking about, we're talking about health, we're talking about wellness, we're talking about what you do, the travel, everything else. But kind of going back to earlier in this episode, you was talking about like your dad passing away. So where does this level of ambition come from? Did your mom then step up and become overly ambitious, or is it just something that you've seen because the way you lived as a younger age, you didn't want to repeat at an older age?
That's really good. So I think it is. So I had this conversation with a friend recently who said they believe people are driven by their fears. And I think my fear is that fear of failure. And I was always, since a young age, I mean, my very first business, I was making earrings in the 3rd grade and selling them to people. So for some reason, I've always had this thing, like I've always wanted my own money. And maybe that is because I saw my mom as a single mom and she worked these crappy little jobs and she worked a lot and she would rely on the men she was with for support. And maybe that instilled it in me, like, no, I want my own money. And it's funny, as I grew up, I was a stay-at-home mom for a few years. But even then, I got into my own little businesses that didn't pan out, but they kept me busy. But I've always had that entrepreneurial spirit. But the ambition, I think it is that fear of failure. Like, I have to do it right now. I know. And ever since I've been divorced, I have nobody to fall back on. If I screw something up, if I get arrested today, there's nobody I'm not calling anybody for bail money. I need to figure it out myself. So what does that do? I don't get arrested. I make my own money. And I don't know what makes me different from someone else that says, oh, I don't want to fail. Like, I like to live nice. I like to live good. And I feel like I earn it. I spoil myself, and I will work to get all of the things that I want. I refuse to settle. So I don't know, bringing it all together. That's it. I don't know that one thing where it comes from, because I wish I could give it to other people, because I know not everybody has it.
Interesting. So it's kind of like it's like a push and pull, as a yin and yang. So obviously earlier on you were saying that, you like to buck the system, but in bucking the system, there has to be some kind of discipline, internal discipline, right? So I want you to kind of talk about like what routines that you have. And obviously I know that you love to break the rules, but in that rule breaking, there has to be some kind of ritual that you do on a day-to-day.
Yes, absolutely. And wow, I've never really looked at it that way before. I definitely don't like rules. I don't like to be told what to do. I like to do my own thing. But within that, I do the right thing. I feel like as long as you put your head down, you work hard, you're not hurting anybody, anything goes. But also, I have to take care of myself. I have to make sure, I'm putting good food in my body. I have to work out. I don't like drama. I don't like negativity. If I feel it somewhere, I'm not. I've gotten very good at listening to my intuition. And that's what it comes down to. Just do the right thing. You can buck the system, but don't be a dick about it. Try to do the right thing. Am I an asshole sometimes? Yes, I am. But I try not to be the next time. That's all I can do. I'm not perfect, but sometimes I'm an asshole. Sometimes I don't mean to be an asshole, but I'm a person that doesn't like to use a lot of words to get to what I'm trying to say. So when I hear other people being too flowery and taking 7 paragraphs to say one sentence, I get annoyed. I get a little short. But maybe that's why I've always had this leadership quality. And I think that's why. It's like, it just works. Even in my bartending days, I've always been that way. And I don't know what it comes from. Maybe it's because I was the oldest of 3 siblings and I had to take care of them. And I've always been in the leadership position, I guess, if you look at it from the family dynamic.
Yeah. I think it's interesting you brought that up, because I mean, obviously in book reading, there's always one book that I always bring up as an example that's a great story, but the first chapter drove me absolutely batshit, which is Lord of the Flies. The first damn chapter was 100% about the damn foliage on the island. That's all they talked about, was the damn foliage on the island for like 30 pages, which blew my damn mind. So I want you to kind of like what you're doing. I mean, you talk about aligning chakras and all these other things that you may be doing consciously and unconsciously. I want you to kind of talk about like what books have helped you to become who you are that you would like to recommend to the listener.
Oh, this is a tough question, because my personality, like I said, I'm like not a big person of words. So I tend to absorb what I need to and apply it. But one of the biggest ones, and it might sound a little cliche, but it got me into the world of affirmations and manifestation. And I'm not over the top with this stuff, but it is there. Like, prove me wrong, because the second I read the book, The Secret, it opened my eyes to what was possible. And I don't know if you read the book or familiar with it, but it starts to talk about just start like manifesting a parking spot. And I would do that. I would drive to New York City on Sundays and I would try to get my parking spot. And it worked like 70% of the time. But then I started playing with it. And I think it's even more than manifestation. It's just your mindset. Like this crazy thing. A year ago, I was trying to figure out what to do with my life, where I wanted to go. I got what was once a crazy idea of moving to Costa Rica is now literally happening. And a lot of it is just believing you can. And I feel like mindset is such a powerful tool in that sense. And so along the same lines, there's Unfuck Yourself, that book. I really like books like that. What else? Another one that was really good was called The Wild by Cheryl Strayed. And I guess that one spoke to me because it's this woman going on this journey and hiking. I have a terrible memory with this stuff, but one of the crazy trails where she's talking about like her toes falling off because of the weather she was in and losing her hiking boot. And that is some determination. I could never do that. I don't want to do that, but it just spoke to the desperation of this woman trying to find herself and the lengths that it would go. So I found that very inspiring. So that's not my path, but I have my own path on that journey.
Yeah. Well, I think it's definitely humorous in a sense, but at the same time, it kind of builds to who you are. So I want you to take that last statement that you said about being determined to push over these hurdles, and then maybe a listener listening right now saying like, wow, like you just do it. Like you don't hesitate, you take the risk, and then you get the rewards. What words of wisdom do you have for someone to kind of help them understand by taking the risk is when they're going to get the largest rewards of their life?
I think the biggest thing I could say is it's going to work out. Like no matter what, everything always works out. Like look at a time in your life when it didn't. And if you just have that mindset, if you believe it will work out, then do it. And also just when things are scary, that to me now is a signal I have to do it. So don't let fear stop you. Fear is normal. Fear is also some excitement. You have to get through it. If you want to live a life of like, just don't settle. Don't settle. I'm rambling. So it's don't let fear stop you. Don't settle. It will work out 100%. And just have the confidence. And the other part of it, have a sense of humor with it. Even when things don't go as planned, even when I'm an asshole and I don't behave like I want to, things don't work out, something dramatic happens, I take a step back and I'm just like, wow, this is going to be a really funny story sometime. Or I can't wait to see how this is going to play out. What is this leading me to? I kind of look at it like I'm watching a movie.
Yeah, I wouldn't look at I mean, you said asshole a couple of times. I wouldn't look at it as asshole, right? It's kind of, I'm from Brooklyn, so like being blunt and straightforward and doing some traveling. Like you go to Europe, they're extremely damn blunt. So I mean, imagine someone that was grown up in the South with the Southern hospitality, and they go to Europe, like they're gonna take some time to adapt. Versus you coming from New Jersey and going to Europe, it'll be like the same thing, like point. So I want you to kind of think about that before next time you say you're being an asshole. Okay. So if somebody's looking to get in contact with you, like what website would you send them to, or like where do you want to send them on social media platforms to get in contact with you?
Well, you can find me at heatherwyattwellness.com. And I'm also on Instagram at @_Heather Wyatt. I'm also on LinkedIn. I'm on all of the places.
Very cool. So that kind of leads me into a couple bonus questions, right? And the first one, I think I may have a clue to who this answer may be, but you know, I'm going to let you do it. So if you could spend 24 hours with anyone, this person could be someone that's dead or alive, someone from the past or the present, but you get to spend 24 hours with them uninterrupted. Who would it be and why?
From the past or present, 24 hours.
Yep. It could be somebody that you know, somebody that you don't know, somebody that you would like to meet, somebody that you've met before.
Wow, this is such an interesting question. I would say my oldest daughter. Because sometimes when you have 24 hours of things not interrupted, you have space to let things happen and dialogues to open up. And I feel like oftentimes we don't get to have those conversations because it's not the right space. So I feel like with 24 hours uninterrupted, there would be space to have conversations about what's coming to mind. Who did you think it would be?
So I knew it was going to be family, first of all. I
Hmm.
thought it was going to be your dad. And I thought you were going to probably say something along the lines to show him what you've become and how you've overcame your own personal depressions to kind of say that you kind of took what he's done and you turned it into something positive. That's the direction I thought you was going to go in.
That is very good. And do you want to know why I didn't say that?
I'm listening.
So I had this, I don't know how I feel about this whole thing, the afterlife. I don't know what you think other people think, but I have this beautiful Reiki woman who does like um conversations with like the afterlife, and I did it with her one time, and she said to me, I have this masculine energy around me,
Hmm.
and however is very standoffish. He's scared to come near you. And I always had this very angry bitterness towards my father because he killed himself. I mean, what the fuck? You don't just do that. You don't just leave behind family. And I didn't understand it.
Hmm.
Now I understand it much more, and I understand it's an illness. But what she also said to me was he feels that resentment. And I didn't tell her any of this stuff. So to me, it was kind of crazy. And she was able to pick up the way in which he died. And she said, he just has this thing, like he's not sorry. He like sees you're good. And I was like, wow. And like, what a kind of fucked up message. Like, you want to hear your loved ones passed on, they're sorry, they love you.
Yeah.
She's like, no, he's terrified of you. He knows you're good. He's not sorry. It was his issue. It had nothing to do with you. And I'm like, strangely comforting. So
Yeah.
I don't know where that stuff comes from, but it was like it was actually a healing message, to be quite honest.
So, like, if we're on that topic, let's dig a little bit deeper with it, right? So, if you had an opportunity, let's say your dad's spirit was to kind of overcome his own personal fears, wherever he is currently right now, and he would come to you, what do you think he would say your most significant achievement to date would be from his point of view?
Oh, um, he would probably be happy that I am so independent and assholish, actually, and rebellious and independent.
Very cool.
I think that's what he would be proud of.
He sounded like a native New Jerseyan for sure. So, I mean, obviously, I think like this show was definitely a great episode, and I like to close out my episodes by giving the opportunity to become the host of the Boston Cage podcast to the person that I'm interviewing. So now Boston Cage is yours, and I'm your guest. Do you have any questions that you'd like to ask me?
What would I ask you? Have you ever experienced any mental health issues?
Post stroke, definitely depression. I didn't really understand, like logically, I understand what depression was like from the textbooks, but I really never
Mm.
experienced it firsthand until I had the stroke. And then post stroke, it was like, damn, that's what that shit is like. That shit completely sucks. It's completely blinding. It is a bottleneck. It is everything that you don't want to be in that state of mind. So, I mean, obviously, I'm a fighter, so getting out of it was a task, but it wasn't something that I knew that I could do. So I definitely did it. But to your point, I think everyone suffers from it to a certain extent. Some people are just so busy,
Mm.
blinded by it. And some people that if they have time to stop and think about it and things are not going as they want it to go, that's when that depression really takes a hold of them.
Oh, that's a really good point. That's why people say being social is so important, even when it's the last thing that you want to do.
Mm, correct. Correct. I think it releases endorphins, your energy level gets up, it makes you think about different things. You kind of it changes your state of being of where you were to kind of putting you somewhere that you didn't think you were going to be.
Hmm. Another question. So, what what's your perception of the afterlife? Do you think that's possible for somebody to get in contact with the deceased loved one?
I tell my wife every single day, everything that I'm doing on Boston Cage and all the entities and digital platforms that I'm building is just for me to not only leave behind a legacy for our kids and for other people to have these opportunities, but the reality is, and I say it facetiously, but I say it dead ass seriously at the same time. Technically speaking, I'll be dead, but I'll be in the cloud. So pretty much it's an opportunity for me to kind of just live forever. And I was like, I want the opportunity to talk to my digital self before I pass away, give that bastard a high five, and then let him run the reins for as long as he possibly can on the internet.
That's very cool. Very
Yeah.
cool.
That's the direction we're going in. I mean, if you think about AI, you think about avatars, once they can kind of really map the not the mathematics, but the human brain is nothing more than a database, right? So once they can get those data points and transfer it, then technically speaking, you can be someone that lives forever. Is just not going to be your physical version of yourself.
That's fascinating to think about. I'm like almost mind blown just thinking about that. Like anything is possible. Like anything is possible.
Yeah,
literally.
it's definitely possible, man. It's funny too, because I mean, Amazon had a movie or a TV show called Upload, which was on that concept. It was not the best variation of the concept that could be perceived, but it was still a version of it. So, obviously people are thinking about it, and eventually, just like anything else that's happened in history, pretty much sooner or later, it's going to happen. It's not going to be ever loving life as a person that we've seen, like your body goes into another body. It's probably just going to be on the web, like literally, like you're saying about your dad could pop up on your computer and be like, hey girl, like I love you, and you're just kind of like, oh hey, how you doing? So it's not, I think it's an opportunity for us to kind of build contextual information so that now we can kind of then take that information and talk for generations. Because I would love to have a conversation with my great great grandmother that I never met, or my great great grandfather that I never met. But those opportunities for technology weren't there, and those opportunities for me to talk to them are not there. But with technology now, potentially I may have an opportunity through my avatar to talk to my great great grandkids.
Wow, that's pretty cool. And that just leads me to think like they have these like legacy like packages that they do and videos and stuff. And when you're doing those, you can kind of address it to like your future generation, which is wild to think about.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's the only thing that's a guarantee is death. So, kind of answering your question, it's the clock is always ticking, and human nature is to figure out how do you either reproduce, right, to pass on your genome or pass on any genetic trace that you have, or how could you live longer, which goes back into health and fitness and everything else. And now this third enterprise of technology, well, how does technology then help someone live forever as well?
So I have one more question for you.
Yeah.
So since your stroke, do you feel like you've been given a second life, or how do you approach life differently now?
I think before it was purpose, because obviously, I was a single dad raising a kid from, his entire life for the most part. And now he's about to be 18, and there's always highs and lows with that. But for me, it was more so, it's confusing to think about it, right? Like, did I get a second chance? I think, hell yeah. But was that second chance something that was given, or was it something that I demanded that I needed to have? That's because I was not willing to sit there and not be able to use my right side of my body. I was not willing to sit there and not do whatever the hell I needed to do to become who I am right now. If I had given up, which some people they do give up when they're faced with that, and they're like, well, this is my end of the road. Like everything that we're talking about in this show and everything that I'm doing right now would not have existed if I did not say I'm taking the next chance, whether you want to give it to me or not.
Oh, to make this a little more bizarre and deeper, this is a great question. Mm-hmm. Do you think that part of you before your stroke manifested that stroke? And I don't mean you wanted to be sick. I mean, you needed that life interruption. Do you think maybe a part of you created that?
Coming from The Secret, I think, to your point, I probably did. I was burnt out. I mean, I was burning my candlestick on both ends. I was working 22 hours a day, and I was seeing some successes, but not the successes that I wanted to see. I wanted to be more of a global reach. I wanted to have more global impact, and I just wasn't seeing that. I was still localized. So, I mean, I did a lot of learning, a lot of education, but by having that stroke or manifesting it, to your point, it kind of reset and give me a new opportunity to recreate everything that I wanted to do in a shorter period of time and become who I am right now. Everything I've done now is in the last 3 years versus before I was working on it for about 18 years.
I think that's fascinating because I don't think that, like, all the tragic things that happen, I don't think we manifest all of them. Mm-hmm. However, the important part of that, and you said it, it's when it happened, I refuse to let it take me down. And that attitude, I think, is what makes winners winners. I mean, getting through those hurdles, being resilient, you can get through anything. And I think that's the gift. And it's really just having that mindset to not let things take you down, no matter what it is. Build off of that. You can get better. And sometimes it can be tough. And that's when you reach out to people for that support. I mean, I still have a team. You know, I have my social people, I have my Reiki person, I have yoga, I do sound baths, I do therapy. I do all of the things to just be okay. And I think a lot of people don't expect to have to do that much work to be okay, but sometimes you do.
Yeah, it's an everyday thing. I mean, anybody that you see at a certain level of success, and not to compare yourself to them first and foremost, but like that, I used to ask this question a lot on the show about, you know, everybody has a perception of overnight success, but in reality, it took 10, 20, 30 years to get to where you are. And how long did it really take you to get there? And that's the reality. I mean, somebody may see you or I today and be like, hey, I love what they have. I love what they're doing. I would love to move to Costa Rica. I would love to have a podcast that has 200 episodes. But in reality, those 200 episodes didn't come in 24 hours. You moving to Costa Rica didn't just wake up on a random Tuesday at age 40 and say, hey, I'm going to like there's different steps that leads up to those moments.
Right, exactly. And I say that to people all the time. Don't be envious of this. If you see something that I'm doing that's exciting to you, go out and do it. Yeah. Go out and do it. I saw people, you know, that I know packing up, selling all their stuff, riding across country. I'm not going to do that in a car, but I do want to go to Costa Rica. And you've gotten a glimpse into my life and the hurdles and the things that have happened to get me to have this kind of thinking and to be the kind of person I am that will be like, yeah, I do want to just sell all my shit and go to Costa Rica. You know, I didn't always have, it doesn't come from having a cushy life where you're just like, oh yeah, that'll be fun. No, there were also then sacrifices I had to make, sacrifices I'm currently making, but I'm willing to embrace it to get to the good part. Because, you know, when you're depressed, you just have almost no feelings sometimes, and you're just down here. And just in not being depressed doesn't mean you're ecstatic all the time. There are crazy, wild, awesome experiences you can have, and there are terrible experiences you can have. And that's life. It's the in-between of all of it, and just having fun. My life is like the best roller coaster ever. I love roller coasters, and it's a roller coaster.
Gotcha. Yeah, you're a little bit of an adrenaline junkie, just a little bit, just a tad. So go into closing, man. I think this was a hell of an episode. I think it's one of those things. If anyone has not seen her episode on the foodie group, by all means, log into Facebook, jump in the foodie group, and you can kind of see another side of her, which is 100% food. Like, we dove into all types of different cuisines, but I think today we kind of given some light to the more passionate side inside of you, like why you're doing what you're doing, how you're doing it, and what your goals and aspirations are moving forward. And I definitely appreciate that about you.
Thank you. This was awesome. So let's get some pumping hearts going.
Do you want to add sound effects to it? I should have downloaded like a heartbeat for this, just for this moment, knowing to use it.